Good evening. I'm Maven of the Eventide, and welcome back to Vampire Reviews. With me tonight, you recognize him by now, I hope. Your third time coming back to Vampire Reviews. This is Dacre Stoker, Dracula historian, and official descendant of Bram Stoker.
Absolutely. Once again, the great-grandnephew of Bram Stoker, the man himself.
Last time you were here, we were discussing a very exciting project that you were funding through Kickstarter, and it was funded, and it's being fulfilled.
Yes, it's exciting. It's called Unearthed with Vic Nadada of Gemini Artifacts. And the good news is we're really close to having all these really cool products to mail out to all those folks that backed the project. And they're now going to get some really cool things that they saw only in images, but now they're going to be able to see the real stuff. And I brought some of them for you today.
I feel like the project just got fulfilled. Like, this is so fast. This is the fastest Kickstarter I've ever heard of getting fulfilled before in my life.
Well, some of them have more, let's say production involved, like industrial production. Mm-hmm. This is like hand done. And Vic, the master himself, has been able to he does this in his own secret way, in a certain secret location. But there's, less moving parts involved, so we can control it ourselves. And that's why he's been able to do it so quickly. And I think also the pandemic has kind of, shut Vic down a little bit and sequestered him to work on this project. So it's a good bonus because of all that.
So you've got this brilliant artist in his artist's reside, and he's just like building all these things for you.
It's more like a mad scientist with all these cool effects, making this stuff, bringing this stuff back to life in the original format. Yeah.
And what the project was this box. We want to show it to them. And inside this box are documents, parts of the research and the inspiration and the history that went into Bram Stoker's creation of Dracula.
That's exactly it. Yep.
And these things inside this box are all aged by the artist to look authentic as they did when the scholars found them after so many decades, right?
So we figured that when you see these, these were in obviously different books and different archives. Bram researched them, and then it took a while for me to hunt them down and get the licenses and get permissions to use them. And obviously, they were much older than what we actually see when Bram had them. They're now over 124 years old just since Bram, but some of them were even 200 or 300 years old before Bram had a look at them.
When you say we, you mean the kind of people that will go and research historical documents and stuff to try to understand the history of the creation of Dracula, right? Is there an official word for that? Are you like Dracularians, like Sherlockians?
I've actually heard that term. I think that, somewhere between, interested researchers, fanatic fans, scholars. The novel Dracula has such an incredible following because it means so much to so many people. There's the guys that are into the movies, the video games, the figures, but the pure literature side of it is, where did some of this inspiration come from? What were the actual facts that Bram was looking at? What books was he looking at? And what did he put into his notes? And this gives us this glimpse, sort of almost pulling back the curtain of this incredible book to see what inspired, how Bram was inspired, what did he use? And that's what we really bring to you in this whole project.
What do you think it is about Dracula or Bram Stoker that makes people want to go in and research it so heavily compared to, Moby Dick or some other classic books?
Well, there may be equally sort of fanatic people.
I don't think there is. I'm sure there are some, but definitely not equally. At least not to the amount, I think.
At least, I've been exposed to very interesting people, let's just say, over the last 15 years of doing my own research into my own ancestor. And people just want to know because there was no autobiography. Bram didn't leave us anything saying, this is what inspired me to write Dracula. He left notes. He left a typescript. He left a journal. And so it's up to us to put all these pieces of the puzzle together to draw our own conclusions. Yes, there's been some biographies and some are better than others. But what inspired me was, and I think inspires other people to answer your question, is we want to find that source material so we can draw our own conclusions.
Is it because none of the biographies is perfect yet? Like, that's still that perfect biography of Bram Stoker is yet to be written?
I think that's the case. And Alicia, it's because we haven't found all the source material. It's just recently did Hans de Roos stumble upon the translation of the Icelandic edition. Mm-hmm. Just 2 years ago, Philip Spedding in the London Library discovered that all the books, that Bram listed as his research materials were sitting in the London Library with really cool notes in the margins. And I've started researching and putting those pieces together for a documentary. So pieces still get discovered. And so you're right, that perfect biography, who knows if it'll ever be rewritten, because we're still finding letters and these journals and different things spread all over the world.
Do you guys have like a society? Would you like one?
It's really no, there are actually Dracula societies, Bram Stoker societies. And in a nice way, everybody does kind of share information, and different biographers share stuff, researchers share stuff. So we are sort of one big sort of ghoulish family that wants to get to the root of this. Very supportive, which is sort of cool because it's out there, and it's about to, the book's going to celebrate its 125th anniversary in 2022. So who knows what we'll find by then.
So you guys go to these libraries, these research centers, and you find these old documents, and they're brittle, they're cracking, the penmanship is impossible to read because people just wrote that way in oldie times. And you've collected some of your most interesting pieces and recreated them.
Yes.
And you showed us some last time of the things that you had for the Kickstarter, but now that it's actually in production, you have some pieces that are finished for the final fulfillment, right?
That's right. Vic has brought them along, and you can hear from him in a little while on how he did some of these, but I get to show you what they are.
So first of all, what's this?
Well, this is actually the folder that some of these papers are going to come in, and Vic recreated an actual crest of Trinity College where some of these archives are in, and also where Bram Stoker actually did his own studying. So this is very authentic, as if you're going to be Bram Stoker keeping a folder of his stuff while he started when he was in university.
This looks like something I found in my grandma's basement.
Well, it could have been, but it's distressed in a way that makes it very authentic. Even you can take a smell of some of these things Vic creates. They have that sort of old musty odor. He won't tell you exactly how he does it, but it's very cool.
All right, so we looked at a few of these last time, but you brought some new ones.
Yeah, let's look at some of the new ones.
I want to share. So tell me, what is this?
Well, this one is sort of a cool piece that I've got.
Tell me why.
Yeah.
Tell me the backstory.
The Library of Congress. Okay, one of the backstory of this is, for so long there has been this urban legend that Bram Stoker did not actually record the copyright properly as per the routine that Library of Congress required. That is 2 books in and all the paperwork.
So the American copyright.
The American
so they knew
copyright.
He had the UK copyright, but there was this urban legend that there was no American copyright for Dracula.
And it drove me crazy as much as I knew about Bram. He was very meticulous. He was, had a legal background, did a lot of contracts himself, and all the other things that he did for copyrights by putting the story, serializing it in different newspapers in America and also in Sweden and so on, where the book was also published in other countries. He followed all the rules to the T. So why did he not do it right in America? Well, I found out that he did. And it was because I found an intern at the Library of Congress that felt the same way I did. And she just needed a little bit of oomph to get going. And she actually found that through possibly a clerical or filing error, it was assumed by different biographers that he didn't put these things in the right place. And the best she could tell is maybe that the book was put in as the name of the book, Dracula, in one filing place, and maybe by Bram Stoker in the other. So maybe that was it. But this is actually proof that he did actually file the copyright correctly. And that jives with what the family says nowadays, that they felt they did get, the royalties from Doubleday. When I contacted Doubleday, they also confirmed that it was done correctly.
So there are these biographers out there for years saying Bram Stoker never filed his American copyright, making him look less fastidious than he was.
Right.
So when did you have her do this? When did she find this for you?
It was about 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah.
So it was lost for more than 100 years, because the date on here is 1897 for that American copyright.
Yep.
Wow.
So there we go. We could put one myth to rest.
Oh, I don't remember this last time. Tell me about this.
Well, let's let your viewers take a close look at this. This is actually handwritten by Bram's eldest brother, Sir William Thornley Stoker, who was the medical consultant to Dracula. And what Bram needed was somebody to help him with how properly to do the blood transfusions, and also in chapter 21, that operation on Renfield when he gets the brain hemorrhage. Bram, again, was detail-oriented, wanted to get things just right, so he pulled in his brother, who actually had done this type of brain operation, which was pretty cutting edge at the time. I found in a medical journal that he'd done it at least 3 times, and 2 of them were successful. And as we know, when Seward and Van Helsing actually cut open Renfield while he was still alive, they were able to get some information out of him, but they weren't able to save him. But the operation was authentically done. It's because of these notes and that diagram.
So his brother wrote down these notes for him to tell, this is how you would do that kind of brain operation. I like that this is just kind of like a different image that's stuck onto this page. So it's not printed, it's pasted.
So I can just imagine the doctor there, drawing this diagram for his brother. It's like, here's how you do it. And all the notes that explains it. And when you read the notes, the handwriting's not great, but it really follows almost word to word.
Doctor handwriting.
Yeah, it is, to just state it.
One thing that hasn't changed in 100 years.
That's right.
This is cool. I've never seen this image of Bram before.
It's a relatively unknown one. It's not new, but it's not widely circulated. And this is an image of Bram that showed up in a newspaper. What's cool about it is he actually risked his life by jumping into the Thames River off of a ferry boat while he was heading to work, and he saw a guy try to commit suicide, jump into the Thames River, which has terrible swirling tides and so on. Bram takes off his coat. He was a strong swimmer, but he was also a great humanitarian, and he jumped in the river to try to save the guy, pulled him out of the river, threw him on his shoulders, ran back to his home where my great-grandfather was living with him, Dr. George Stoker, and they tried to revive him, and they didn't. So he died on the dining room table. And apparently from Bram's son, he tells in his notes that Florence Stoker was not very impressed with having a suicide victim die in their household. So I'm not kidding. Within a year, they had to move, and they moved 2 doors away.
Well, isn't there a rumor that suicide victims become vampires?
She may have known more than we did at the time. But Bram actually got the Royal Humane Society Bronze Medal for risking his life to try to save a life.
So is this from like an article that was written about his... It says Mr. Bram Stoker's gallant act.
Yep, it was in the paper saying, because he was well known as a theater manager. So, good for Bram Stoker that he did this. And of course, this is the type of thing that J.D. Barker and I use because it's a well-known fact. And we inserted that into our novel Dracula in a certain way.
That's right. You use that suicide victim as a character in your story, yeah.
Exactly. We like to take some of the truth, like Bram Stoker did, and sort of move it around and make people believe that it's probably real.
That's one thing I was going to ask about why people are so interested in researching Bram's inspiration is because he did use so much truth in his novel, right?
He did. It's actually tricked people into thinking that all of Bram's story is real. And people love to catch him going, wait a sec, he got that wrong. He got that wrong. The date doesn't line up. And I say, well, wait a sec. He based things on truth.
Did he claim it was real as a publicity stunt?
He did. In his original preface, he made it sound like it was real, but that was edited down in the final preface.
Okay.
Which kind of bugs me in a way that maybe it was going to come across as too real. And sort of like War of the Worlds caused people to freak out a little bit. But, I can't argue too much because I use that to my advantage. And saying, what if it was real? What if Bram's original idea was make people believe it's real because it is?
And that drives that fascination for the scholars who say, well, how much of it was real? And let's find out exactly how much.
What are those facts that he based these things on? Where is that written? I want to see, written facts to see what Stoker used as, that sort of gray area between fact and fiction.
There is so much in this folder, but I just want to look at one more. Tell me about this map.
Okay, well, let's open this up for your viewers. If you would hold that side. There we go. This is a map of the eastern part of the U.S. and to Midwest. And if you look at this, you'll kind of think, what is going on here?
There's lines scribbled over it with stops, like circle stops.
That's right. This was Bram Stoker, being Bram Stoker, the theatrical manager, when he came over to America 8 times with the Lyceum Theater to organize these tours in American cities. And what Bram was in charge of was the logistics of about 50 people, not just the actors, but the stage guys, all the workers. And he had to make sure he'd know how far would it get from one city to another, what the stops were. In another little papers, it was how long, because he would obviously have to arrange for vehicles to meet these people at the other side. So doesn't that make you think a little bit about Bram Stoker in his outlining of Dracula? Because in his Dracula notes, he does the same thing with Jonathan Harker on the trains, going from Munich all the way to Bistrica, and then in carriage driving. He also does it at the end of the story when the band of heroes come in the Orient Express. So he understood train schedules, know how to get them. And again, it made the story feel authentic, as you just mentioned. But he did this in real. That's where it all comes from.
Something we kind of take advantage of today, because we'll just GPS it and we say, oh, it'll take me 14 hours to drive from this part of America to that part of America.
They didn't have that. Bram Stoker was the GPS in those days.
He must have been brilliant.
Well, he had that mind. There was the fantasy mind, that sort of dreamer guy that had a great sense of imagination, but there was also that, very sort of organized, the legal mind, the guy that wrote the first manual for the clerks of petty sessions. So he had that sort of dual side of him going, that very analytical side, but also that dark sense of imagination. And I think it just created that really great sort of meshing of the two to create the story that we all look at today as being a genius piece of work.
So these are all part of Dracula Unearthed, the finished Kickstarter that comes in this gorgeous box with all these things. If you funded this, you'll be getting this soon, you say.
Yeah, it's due out. We're thinking it's on schedule to come out in early April. So get ready because you're going to get a really cool surprise. We're just going to put this little piece of cloth on top of it just for protection and back in the box.
This isn't really why you're here with me today, though, is it?
Well, besides a nice catch-up on the Unearthed, we do have something else.
You have something new I'm very excited about. So there's a new Kickstarter that you're funding. It's already funded.
Yes.
But it's still got some time to go. So there's still some time to pledge if you want to get in on this.
Yep.
And tell me about this project.
Well, it's called Dracula First Editions. And it's a little emotional to me because I was, entrusted with the Stoker family edition of Dracula, the first edition. Probably the first copy of Dracula that sort of came out in circulation, and we'll get to see it in a little while. But once again, Vic Nadada of Gemini Artifacts is working his magic on creating these two versions of the first UK edition of Dracula, which came out in 1897, and then the first US edition of Dracula that came out in 1899. And
so these are replicas of the actual.
Exactly. He's done the same sort of thing. He's replicated down to the nth degree the antiqued version of both of these books, but also for some people who don't want an antique version, he's making what we call a virgin copy, a copy that would have looked like it did back in the day, pulled off the shelf, but nice and clean and sort of tighter.
Can we see your first edition?
I think you can handle it. I think you guys can handle it. It is very, very special because it was actually presented to me, Alicia, by my father. And when you get a close look at this is the version that Vic is going to be recreating. And it's got some wear and tear to it.
So how old is this book?
Well, the story with this book was actually given, and I've got actually the documentation to prove this. It was actually given by Bram Stoker May 25th, 1897. So one day before the actual publication of the book, Bram gave it to his mother. And he wrote, to my dearest mother. So she gets the book. Now, we also have included in Unearthed 2 letters that Bram's mother wrote to Bram after reading this book and reading a review of it, this very copy, saying how wonderful it was and how proud she was of him, how it's going to put you, on the level of Poe and Shelley, and it's going to make you lots of money.
So this book is 124 years old.
Yeah.
And it sure looks it.
And it sure looks it. I mean, you can hold it.
I can hold it.
As you're looking at it, though, it also was passed down from Bram's mom to one of his younger brothers, Richard Nugent Stoker, who moved off to British Columbia when he decided to work remotely as a doctor and loving of botany on Vancouver Island. And then he passed it on to his wife in 1936. When he passed away, she inherited it. And it somehow ended up in Montreal, Canada, back in the early 50s when my dad had it. And I'm a little embarrassed to say I actually brought it to university to read it and to show it. And then I ended up putting it back in the bookcase. And when my dad actually passed away, it was willed to me, so it's entrusted to me.
So from Bram Stoker's hands to yours, this copy of Dracula has stayed in your family from before the first edition even officially came out.
That's right. A day before it came out, yep.
So this is what you've recreated.
Yes.
And you are selling copies that kind of look like this, as well as virgin copies that look brand new.
Right. So, yeah, you can see, you can look closely. There is some wear, as we said, wear and tear. But, Vic's going to tell you in a little bit some of his secrets on how he recreates a really cool, old-looking, 124-year-old book. It's special because, it's got that sort of mustard cover on it. The only thing a little bit different is I don't have a dust cover with this. And there were actually dust jackets or dust covers when these books originally sold. And there's a cool kind of backstory to those, is that at one time, in London, there was a lot of soot and dirt and things in the air. So if you walked into a bookstore, Alicia, and wanted to buy a nice book, the bookseller would reach onto his bookshelf, pull it off, take the dust jacket and throw it in the bin.
Because it was actually just a dust jacket to keep the dust off.
Keep the dust off. Then they'd give you the book. You'd walk out happily and go home. And then you'd have to do one more thing. You'd have to cut the pages. Because this one has been read, so the pages have been cut. But to this day, you can even find where the tops of the pages are glued together. You'd have to take a sort of letter opener or a skinny knife and cut the pages. That way, you knew for sure you were getting a brand new book. I actually have a few in my collection, different editions of Dracula, one from Italy that is uncut. So it's a pretty cool find to find an uncut book. But you will be getting the dust jackets for both the UK and the US edition.
This is the original. Let's look at the replicas.
Yeah, let's look at some replicas. So we've got a Virgin US edition to show you. So this is how it would have looked like in 1899 when Doubleday published Dracula. Obviously, it's got a different cover. It's got a pretty cool cover to it. We've got another one we can show you. But what I like about the cover, though, at least if you look at this, it looks an awful lot like Bran Castle, doesn't it, in Transylvania. And as some of you know, I've actually discovered with the help of Hans de Roos the real location of the fictional Castle Dracula.
So if you were in 1899 going to buy your copy of Dracula in America, this is what you would have bought.
Yep.
Keep it for 100 years and it'll start to look like that.
Or get Vic to antique it
Or
for you.
if you don't want to wait, here's your other option.
That's right. So this is what they look like, and this is one of the other things that we're offering, is a kit to actually show Bram Stoker and also the frontispiece, and this is what the cover will look like. And then also Bram, just for a cool effect, we are offering any of the public domain documents that Vic has antiquated, and this is the death certificate of Bram Stoker. Kind of a cool collection to have framed if you're a person that would like to put something up on the wall rather than just put it on the book on the bookcase. And
this looks 100 years old, just like your book.
It does, yes. It's
so
awesome.
That's the U.S. edition, but you're also doing the UK edition, the yellow one.
Yeah, we're gonna do a Virgin edition of the UK edition. Those aren't completed just yet, so we can't actually show you those. But it'll be nice and clean and tight version, sort of this mustard yellow one, but much cleaner and doesn't have all the wear and tear on the spine. We don't have yet to show you is the dust jackets for both the books, but it would be interesting to bring in the master himself, as I said, the mad scientist, to come in and maybe share. If you could twist his arm, he could maybe tell you some of the secrets on what he uses to actually, the process to make them look that way.
All right, let's talk about making a book.
Okay.
Vic Nadada, thank you for coming back.
Thanks for having me back.
This is a wonderful new project that you're doing. Mm-hmm. What made you guys decide to do a new project, do this instead of just the Unearthed that you did before? Was there that much interest in the books? Or
that book that Dacre has, the family edition, is just incredible, and I had to redo it.
So how do you do it? I know you can't tell me everything, but tell me what you can.
Okay. Well, it's a multi-step process. I choose the paper wisely. There's really not much I could tell you. I have beat it with a chain. But you take the book and you beat it with a chain. I'll beat it with a chain, and I'll run over it with my car. And I'll do other things like that, but I'll also take measurements of the book and clean up the file digitally and try to make it as close to the authentic edition as possible.
And you also make the books have that old book smell too, don't you?
Yes, I add a mildew odor to the book. And it's used in haunted houses, actually, that odor too. So if you walk through an old haunted house, like in a carnival, you'll get that scent as well.
Because you have kind of like a background in magic tricks and stuff too, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right. Yeah, and all special effects and things like that.
So besides just making the cover look distressed, you do the insides too, right?
Right. We go over the entire interior of it.
Like every single page.
Every page gets a treatment on there. The foxing, which is the little brown spots that you see in the book, I've recreated those as well, which is a painstaking process of trial and error.
What naturally causes that?
So it's a decay in the paper over time. Yeah, and it just turns brown.
Do certain papers decay in different ways?
Yeah, so different papers, the earlier papers, the more wood that's involved in the paper, the more they decay. So nowadays, papers won't decay because there's no wood really involved in any of these papers. They last forever.
So when you formatted the inside of the book, you had to figure out what font it was, like the positioning on the page, the exact measures of the margins.
Yep, exactly right. And a lot of these files were very dirty, which means that you couldn't even read some of the text. So I went in digitally and I cleaned up the whole file. I outline each word sometimes just to try to clean up the file the best I can. Mm-hmm.
So the Kickstarter for Unearthed, the documents, the replica documents that you create, ended last October around Halloween, and you're already getting those fulfilled. You're almost done with this project. You started this new project. You work so fast.
Right.
So when does it look like these books are going to go out?
These are going to be done for October as well.
Oh, perfect.
So it'll
timing.
be exactly a year.
So fund this project now.
Yes.
Order your book, and you'll have it in time for Halloween.
Exactly.
This book is so beautiful, and I think it's so cool that you guys are making these because, Dracula's been republished hundreds of times with hundreds of covers because every year Barnes & Noble will put out a new collector's edition. But we've never seen anything that looks like this before since it originally came out. So if I get this book, brand new, pristine, or maybe I'll get the aged one, but...
Or maybe you get both because we're offering both a little deal if you get both.
Would you autograph it for me?
Well, of course I would for you. I mean... You're Maven of the Eventide. Of course I would. But in all seriousness, I'm going to be autographing any of them that people want them autographed. There's an option at the end when it's time to check out. No additional charge. I will personalize it, autograph it. And I think it's it would be a cool thing, much like sort of Bram Stoker did, is, start your own family tradition. Much like he did with his mother, then his brothers.
Because that's what he did in this book. He signed it to his mother.
Right.
And then your family kept signing the book.
Right. So maybe I start by signing it to you, and you then go and sign on to other people.
Bequeath it to your children and your children's children. And eventually, your virgin copy will end up looking like this in 100 years.
It will. And you won't even have to get Vic to run over with his car or beat it with a chain. It'll just naturally age wonderful, like a good wine, like a good book.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing these to share with us.
Well, thank you for sharing the time and bringing this to all your viewers.
So how much longer do we have to pledge? When does this Kickstarter end?
It ends on April the 4th. So we're getting down to the wire here. There is plenty of time, and there's plenty of books left to go.
And it's already funded, so you don't have to worry about that. Just get in while you can to get your book.
Yeah, don't wait another 124 years.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing this with me.
Well, thank you, and thank you to your viewers for being so supportive and accommodating.